The rain had begun its rhythmic monologue hours ago, a soft, insistent drumming against the ancient leaded panes of the library window. Clara traced the condensation with a fingertip, the cool glass a welcome contrast to the flush that had steadily risen to her cheeks since she'd entered this room. Outside, the night was a blurred canvas of charcoal and moss, the world beyond the estate's thick stone walls receding into an indistinct hum of wind and water. Inside, it was a sanctuary carved from warmth and shadow, a haven that smelled of aged leather, burning logs, and a subtle, intoxicating hint of something else, something masculine, complex, and utterly captivating. She wasn't usually one to seek out such lavish solitude. Her life in the city was a vibrant, often chaotic tapestry of deadlines and gallery openings, of hurried lattes, and the exhilarating thrum of creative energy. But this commission to document the estate's formidable art collection had presented an irresistible opportunity for a different kind of focus. And perhaps, a different kind of quiet. The fire in the grand stone hearth crackled, throwing amber light across the towering shelves of books that lined every wall. Volumes bound in rich, worn leather, their spines glinting with gold, seemed to watch her with a silent, knowing gaze. She had chosen a deep, velvet armchair, a shade of sapphire so dark it almost merged with the encroaching gloom, sinking into its plush embrace as if it were an old friend. The fabric was exquisitely soft against her skin, a whisper of luxury that felt decadent and deeply satisfying. She wore a simple silk dress, the color of twilight, that draped elegantly, hinting at curves without overtly displaying them. It was perfect for an evening of quiet contemplation, a glass of something warm in hand, lost in the pages of a forgotten novel. But the novel lay unread on the small inlaid table beside her, its cover a forgotten landscape. Her gaze was instead drawn to the man across the room. Lucy and Art. He had entered the library with the silent grace of a predator, yet there was no menace in his bearing, only an innate authority that commanded attention without demanding it. He was the master of this estate, a man whose reputation for discerning taste and formidable intellect preceded him, whispered in hushed tones among the art world elite. He was older than her, perhaps by a decade or more, the kind of age that etched character into the corners of his eyes and softened the angles of his jaw, making him not just handsome, but compelling. He hadn't seemed to notice her at first, or perhaps he had simply acknowledged her presence with the subtle flick of his dark gaze, then returned to the ornate globe he was studying by the flickering firelight. His hands, long-fingered and strong, traced the ancient cartography, his movements deliberate and precise. He wore a dark velvet smoking jacket, the deep crimson fabric catching the light with a subdued sheen that echoed the warmth of the fire. It clung to his broad shoulders, hinting at the taut strength beneath, and the collar, turned up slightly, framed the elegant line of his neck. Clara found herself mesmerized. It wasn't just his physical presence, though that was undeniable. The lean, athletic build, the dark, slightly tousled hair that fell across his forehead, the sharp planes of his face. It was the aura he projected, an intensely private man, yet one who possessed a profound understanding of the world, and perhaps of human nature. He moved, finally, turning from the globe, and his eyes found hers. They were the color of bitter chocolate, deep and intelligent, with a glint of something unreadable lurking within their depths. A slow, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a smile that seemed to acknowledge a shared secret, a silent understanding. "Clara," he said, his voice a low timbre that resonated in the quiet room, a sound as rich and smooth as aged brandy. "I hadn't realized you were still up. I thought you would have retired after such a long journey." "The rain has a way of keeping me awake," she replied, her voice a little breathier than she intended. She cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure. "And this room, it's rather captivating." He nodded, his gaze sweeping over the shelves, the fire, then back to her, lingering on the velvet of her chair, and then, inexplicably, on the curve of her throat. "It has its charms. Would you care for a drink?" "I was just about to pour myself a nightcap." "I wouldn't say no to a glass of whatever you're having," she managed, a small smile playing on her lips. He moved towards a mahogany drinks cabinet, its polished surface reflecting the firelight like a dark pool. The scent she had noticed earlier, that complex, masculine fragrance, intensified as he moved closer. It was a blend of sandalwood and something subtly spicy, utterly unique to him, and it clung to the air, weaving itself around her senses. He poured 2 generous measures into heavy crystal tumblers, the amber liquid glinting like liquid gold. Magnac, he announced, turning to hand her one of the glasses. His fingers brushed hers as she took it, a fleeting contact that sent a shiver tracing a path up her arm. His skin was warm, firm, and the touch, though brief, felt charged, electric. "Thank you," she murmured, taking a slow sip. The brandy was smooth, fiery, spreading a delightful warmth through her chest. It was exactly what she needed. He settled into a matching armchair opposite her, not quite facing her directly, but angled in a way that invited conversation, a shared intimacy. The fire cast long, dancing shadows, deepening the contours of his face, making his eyes seem even more profound. "Tell me, Clara," he began, his voice soft, contemplative, "what do you find so captivating about this room? Is it the history etched into the spines of these forgotten tales? Or perhaps the secrets whispered by the roaring fire?" She considered his question, feeling a strange openness in his presence, a willingness to share thoughts she might usually keep guarded. "It's the sense of continuity, I think, of lives lived within these walls, stories told and untold. And the quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts. Truly hear them, for a change." She took another sip of the brandy, feeling its warmth spread. "And you? What draws you to it tonight?" He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his gaze distant for a moment, lost in some private thought. "Perhaps the same. The quiet, the escape from the relentless demands of the day." And sometimes he paused, his eyes meeting hers across the space between them. Sometimes it's simply the desire for companionship without the burden of expectation. His honesty was disarming, a velvet glove over a steel core. It made her feel seen, truly seen, in a way that few people ever managed. The air between them thickened, not with awkwardness, but with a palpable current of unspoken understanding. The rain outside continued its relentless serenade, only adding to the sense of being cocooned in their own private world. "No expectations," she echoed softly, a small smile playing on her lips. "I think I could appreciate that." He leaned back in his chair, his long legs stretching out before him, crossing at the ankles. The movement was fluid, graceful. "Tell me about your work, Clara. Your agent spoke highly of your unique perspective, your ability to capture the essence of a piece, not just its form." She felt a flicker of pride, but also a growing awareness of his intense scrutiny. His dark eyes seemed to peel back layers, looking beyond the superficial. "I try to see the story behind the art," she explained, finding her voice growing more confident now. "Who made it, why they made it, what it means to those who encounter it. Art isn't just about aesthetics, it's about human connection, about shared emotion across centuries." "A beautiful sentiment," he murmured, taking a slow sip of his brandy, his gaze never leaving hers. "And one I profoundly agree with. So many view art as mere decoration or worse, as an investment. They miss the soul, the beating heart." They fell into an easy rhythm of conversation then, discussing art, history, philosophy, their words weaving a delicate tapestry of shared interests and differing perspectives. She found herself captivated by his insights, by the breadth of his knowledge, and by the subtle inflections in his voice that revealed depths she was eager to explore. He listened with an attentiveness that was rare and deeply flattering, his head tilted slightly, his eyes alight with genuine interest. The fire crackled, casting their faces in a warm, shifting glow. The rain outside intensified for a moment, then softened again, a continuous backdrop to their deepening connection. She felt a lightness, a freedom in his presence that was both exhilarating and a little frightening. It was as if she had shed the protective layers she usually wore, revealing a part of herself that craved this kind of profound engagement. At one point, he rose to replenish their glasses, and as he walked past her, the subtle scent of his cologne enveloped her, a warm, intoxicating cloud that made her breath catch. She watched the powerful grace of his movements, the way his jacket shifted with the play of muscles beneath. When he returned, he paused beside her chair, holding out the fresh glass of Armagnac. This time, his fingers brushed against her wrist, a deliberate, lingering touch that sent a jolt through her veins. Her skin tingled where he had touched her, a residual heat that blossomed into a delicious warmth. "Cold?" he asked, his voice a low rumble, his eyes searching hers. There was a question in their depths, an unspoken invitation. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just warm." He smiled, a slow knowing curve of his lips that sent a shiver down her spine, a shiver that had nothing to do with the chill of the night. He lowered himself back into his chair, but the proximity, the brief, charged touch, had altered the landscape between them. The air was no longer just thick with conversation, but with something more primal, more elemental. The hours melted away, marked only by the dwindling fire and the gradual softening of the rain. They talked about their lives, or rather, he encouraged her to talk about hers, offering snippets of his own in return, carefully curated glimpses into a world far removed from her own. He spoke of travels to distant lands, of discovering hidden treasures, of the quiet satisfaction of restoring something lost to its former glory. She found herself sharing anecdotes from her own unconventional journey, of the struggles and triumphs of being an artist in a world often more concerned with commerce than creativity. He seemed to understand, to truly empathize, his dark eyes reflecting a deep understanding that made her feel safe, cherished even. "I imagine your work requires a great deal of patience," he observed, swirling the last of his Armagnac. "To sit with a piece, to truly absorb its essence, to find the words that do it justice." "It does," she agreed, her gaze drawn to the flickering firelight reflecting in his eyes. "But it's a patience born of passion. You can't rush discovery, not true discovery." "Indeed not." He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze intense. "And sometimes the most profound discoveries are made in the quietest moments, aren't they? When the world outside falls away, and you're left with nothing but the raw truth of a moment, a connection." His words hung in the air, imbued with a weight that transcended their simple meaning. She felt the truth of them resonate deep within her. The quiet of the room, the dying fire, the hushed whisper of the rain, it all contributed to this sense of profound intimacy, the shared moment that felt both fragile and immensely powerful. Her heart began to beat a little faster, a soft, insistent rhythm against her ribs. She was acutely aware of him, of the way the firelight played on his strong jawline, the subtle movement of his chest as he breathed, the way his eyes seemed to hold the entire universe within their depths. The velvet of her armchair seemed to press into her skin, reminding her of the softness, the luxury, the sensual embrace of the night. He slowly reached out a hand, not to touch her, but to pluck a stray thread of velvet from the arm of her chair, his fingers brushing the fabric where her own arm rested. His touch was featherlight, barely there, yet it sent a wave of heat through her, a delicious tremor that started deep inside and spread outwards. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingered there for a breath-stopping moment, then rose to meet her eyes again. "It's late," he murmured, his voice a little rougher now, a subtle edge of something primal woven into its smooth texture. "Perhaps we should consider retiring." The words were practical, sensible, yet the way he said them, the question in his eyes, the lingering tension in the air, made them anything but. They were a challenge, an invitation, a silent inquiry into what she truly desired. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The thought of leaving this room, of breaking this fragile, exquisite connection, felt almost unbearable. She wanted to stay, to prolong this moment, to see where this unspoken dance between them would lead. The air was thick with unspoken desires, with a longing that hummed beneath her skin. The velvet night outside seemed to press in, urging them closer, promising secrets and revelations. She met his gaze, her own eyes wide and unblinking, reflecting the dying embers of the fire. "Perhaps," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Or, perhaps, not yet." A slow smile spread across his face, a smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners, making him look both devilishly charming and profoundly knowing. He leaned back again, but this time, his gaze never left hers, holding her captive in the warmth of his dark eyes. The rain outside had finally softened to a mere sigh, a velvet whisper against the window panes, mirroring the hushed anticipation that now filled the room. The night was young, and suddenly, anything felt possible. His words, so simple yet so potent, had resonated deep within her, a chord struck in the quietest chambers of her heart. Not yet. It wasn't a denial, but a promise, a delicious deferral that heightened every nerve ending. He understood the slow, luxurious unraveling, the exquisite torture of anticipation. Her own smile mirrored his, a softer, more vulnerable curve of her lips, a silent acknowledgement of the game they were playing, a game with rules only they understood, where the stakes were nothing less than everything. He didn't move, yet the air between them thickened, alive with unspoken desires. The scent of him, a subtle blend of rain, warm skin, and something uniquely his, like ancient woods and forbidden spices, drifted across the space, teasing her senses, pulling her deeper into his orbit. Her gaze, which had been locked with his, now drifted, tracing the sharp line of his jaw, the slight stubble that shadowed it, the strong column of his throat, before returning to the depths of his eyes. They held a silent question, a challenge, an invitation. "No," she whispered, her voice a silken thread in the quiet room. "Not yet. But soon." The affirmation hung in the air, a delicate, shimmering thing. His smile deepened and he finally stirred. Slowly, deliberately, he shifted his weight, his lean frame unfolding from the armchair. Every movement was fluid, controlled, a predator's grace. He didn't rush, didn't break the spell, but rather intensified it. He took a single step, then another, closing the distance between them with a languid certainty that made her breath catch in her throat. She remained on the sofa, a willing captive, her heart thrumming against her ribs like a hummingbird trapped in a cage. He stopped directly in front of her, his knees almost brushing hers. The subtle scent of him was now intoxicating, a heady perfume that filled her lungs, making her feel lightheaded and deliciously vulnerable. He didn't touch her, not yet, but his presence was an overwhelming force, a palpable heat that radiated from him, warming her skin, stirring a fervent longing deep within her. "Soon," he echoed, his voice a low rumble, richer now that he was closer. His eyes, those captivating dark pools, dipped to her lips, lingered there for a heartbeat, then lifted to her eyes again, seeking permission, offering a silent plea. It was a dance of power and surrender, each move exquisitely choreographed by instinct and desire. Her gaze fell to his mouth, drawn irresistibly to its sensual curve. She imagined the feel of it, the taste of it. A shiver traced its way down her spine. "What are we waiting for?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper, a mere wisp of sound in the charged silence. He chuckled, a soft warm sound that vibrated through the air, sending delicious tremors through her. "For the moment to be perfect," he murmured, his gaze never leaving hers. "For every sense to be alight, every nerve ending tingling. For the world outside to fade, leaving only us." As if on cue, a faint sigh of wind rattled the window panes, a final farewell from the retreating rain. The room, lit only by the soft glow of a distant lamp and the flickering embers in the fireplace, seemed to shrink, creating an intimate cocoon around them. He reached out, his hand moving with agonizing slowness. Her eyes followed the trajectory of his fingers, anticipating the touch, bracing for the electric shock she knew would follow. He didn't touch her face or her arm, but rather, his long fingers gently grazed the delicate skin of her inner wrist, just where her pulse beat a frantic rhythm. It was a feather-light touch, barely there, yet it sent a jolt through her entire being, a current of pure sensation that flowed directly to the core of her. Her breath hitched. His thumb began to stroke the sensitive skin there, a slow, hypnotic rhythm that mirrored the frantic beating of her own heart. The world outside truly did fade, dissolving into a blurry background. There was only him, his touch, the heat radiating from his body, and the intoxicating scent of him. "You're exquisite," he breathed, his voice rough with emotion, his eyes darkening further, searching hers as if trying to read the deepest desires hidden within. "Every inch of you, a masterpiece." Her cheeks flushed, a warmth spreading across her skin that had nothing to do with the fireplace. She found she couldn't speak, could only meet his intense gaze, her own eyes wide with a mixture of longing and a burgeoning vulnerability. He slowly knelt, bringing his face level with hers, his hand still gently caressing her wrist. The proximity was overwhelming, thrilling. She could see the tiny flecks of gold in his dark irises, the subtle flush on his high cheekbones, the faint tremor in his hands. He was as affected as she was, and that realization was profoundly intoxicating. "May I?" he asked, his voice a low murmur, his eyes dropping once more to her lips. It wasn't a question of physical permission, but a deeper inquiry, an asking for her soul's consent. She didn't need words. Her answer was in the slight parting of her lips, the subtle tilt of her head, the unspoken invitation in her eyes. He closed the final inch, his mouth descending slowly, deliberately, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But she had no desire to escape. His lips, soft and warm, met hers. It was a tentative, almost chaste first kiss, a mere brush of skin against skin, a whispered hello. But in that fleeting touch, an entire universe ignited. She felt a sigh escape her, a soft surrender, as she leaned into him, deepening the kiss herself. His hands moved, one leaving her wrist to cup the side of her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone, while the other moved to the small of her back, pressing her gently, almost imperceptibly, closer. The kiss deepened, slowly at first, a gentle exploration, a testing of waters. His lips moved over hers with a tender reverence, a seeking, a savoring. She responded in kind, her own lips parting slightly, inviting him further. His tongue, warm and soft, traced the delicate seam of her mouth, a silent request that she answered by opening for him. And then, the dam broke. His kiss became more urgent, more demanding, yet still imbued with an exquisite tenderness. Her hands, which had been resting on her lap, lifted as if drawn by an invisible force, finding purchase on his broad shoulders, her fingers curling into the soft fabric of his shirt. She felt the ripple of muscles beneath her touch, the solid strength of him. He tasted of night and longing, of something wild and untamed that resonated with a primal part of her own being. She gave herself over to the sensation, to the intoxicating dance of their mouths, the soft sighs that escaped them both, the frantic beat of their hearts echoing in the quiet room. His hands moved, one sliding from her cheek to entwine in her hair, cradling the back of her head, tilting her just so, deepening the angle of the kiss. The other hand, still at the small of her back, pressed her even closer, until there was no space left between them. Her body molded against his, the soft curves of her breasts pressing against his hard chest. The kiss went on, a timeless exploration, a journey through desire and longing. It wasn't just a physical act, it was a communion, a melding of souls, a silent conversation where every nuance of feeling was conveyed without words. She felt herself dissolving into him, becoming a part of him, and the sensation was both frightening and utterly exhilarating. When he finally broke the kiss, it was with a soft groan, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling in the still air. His eyes were closed, his chest heaving slightly, and she could feel the rapid pulse throbbing beneath her fingers where they still gripped his shoulders. "Beautiful," he whispered again, his voice raw, his eyes still closed. "So incredibly beautiful." She opened her eyes slowly, blinking as she adjusted to the soft light, and found herself gazing into his. They were dark, swimming with unbridled desire, yet still held that profound knowing, that deep understanding that seemed to pierce straight through her. I can't breathe," she confessed, a breathless laugh escaping her lips. He chuckled, a low, throaty sound. "Good," he murmured, opening his eyes and meeting her gaze. "Because I don't want you to." He leaned back slightly, his hands still holding her, one in her hair, the other at her back. His gaze swept over her face, lingering on her swollen lips, her flushed cheeks, her wide, luminous eyes. "I want to steal every breath, every thought, until there's only me." The intensity of his words, the unwavering focus of his gaze, sent another shiver through her, a delicious tremor of fear and excitement. She believed him. She felt that he could indeed consume her entirely, and a part of her yearned for that complete surrender. He slowly straightened, pulling her gently up with him, until she was standing before him, their bodies still intimately pressed together. The soft fabric of her dress rustled against his clothes, a whisper of sound in the quiet room. He didn't let go of her, not entirely, his hands now resting lightly on her waist, his thumbs stroking the soft skin just above her hips. "Let's get rid of these," he murmured, his gaze dropping to the buttons of his shirt, then to the delicate fabric of her dress. It was an invitation, a shared decision, an unspoken agreement that the time for not yet was rapidly diminishing. He began with his own shirt, his movements slow and deliberate, each button a small act of undressing that heightened the anticipation. Her eyes followed his fingers as they deftly unfastened the small pearls, revealing more and more of the taut, muscular planes of his chest. The fabric fell away, revealing a smooth expanse of skin, lightly dusted with dark hair that narrowed to a tantalizing line down his abdomen. The sight of him, so strong and undeniably masculine, stole her breath anew. He shrugged the shirt off his shoulders, letting it fall to the floor in a soft heap. He stood before her, bare-chested, his body a sculpted testament to strength and grace. The firelight played over his skin, highlighting the subtle contours of his muscles, casting him in a warm, golden glow. Her gaze drifted, captivated, over his broad shoulders, the powerful curve of his biceps, the strong line of his collarbones. She longed to touch him, to feel the warmth of his skin against her own. As if reading her mind, he took her hands in his, bringing them to his chest. "Touch me," he whispered, his voice a low command, an irresistible plea. Her fingers trembled slightly as they made contact with his skin. It was warm, smooth, and exquisitely firm. She spread her palms, feeling the subtle give and take of his muscles beneath her touch, the rhythmic thrum of his heart against her fingertips. A soft moan escaped her, a sound of pure pleasure. He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, then to her temple, his lips brushing against her hair. "Now you," he murmured against her skin. He pulled back slightly, his hands moving from her waist to the delicate silk fabric of her dress. It was a simple garment, designed for comfort, but now, under his gaze, it felt like the most luxurious, most tantalizing barrier. His fingers found the zipper at the back, tracing its path with a maddening slowness that made her whole body ache with longing. She closed her eyes, tilting her head back slightly, giving him full access. She felt the cool metal of the zipper against her skin as he slowly, almost reverently, pulled it down. Each inch of revealed skin sent a fresh wave of sensation through her. The dress loosened, falling away from her shoulders, pooling around her waist. He didn't rush. He slipped the straps off her shoulders, letting the silk slide down her arms, revealing her bare shoulders, the delicate curve of her collarbones. Her skin, warmed by the fire and the electric anticipation, felt exquisitely sensitive. He bent his head, pressing a series of soft, lingering kisses to her exposed shoulder, then to the hollow of her throat, sending shivers dancing down her spine. "You are intoxicating," he murmured against her skin, his breath warm and intoxicating. Her hands, which had been resting on his chest, now slipped around his neck, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at his nape, pulling him closer. She wanted to feel his skin against hers, completely, utterly. He continued to undress her, his movements slow and deliberate, savoring each revelation. The dress fell to her feet, a silken pool around her ankles, leaving her standing before him in nothing but her delicate lace lingerie. The soft, sheer fabric, designed to hint rather than reveal, now felt like a second skin, clinging to her curves, accentuating every line. His gaze swept over her, a slow, appreciative journey that made her feel both intensely vulnerable and exquisitely desired. His eyes, dark and deep, held a hunger that mirrored her own. "You are perfection," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate lace of her bra, following the curve of her breast, then moving lower, along the lace of her briefs, to the soft curve of her hip. His touch was light, reverent, yet it ignited a fire that raged through her veins. She trembled, her breath catching in her throat. The air in the room seemed to crackle with an almost unbearable tension, a vibrant hum of unspoken desires and unfulfilled promises. He knelt again, slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. He reached for her foot, his fingers gently encircling her ankle. His touch was electrifying. He slowly, carefully, removed her shoes, then her stockings, his fingers brushing against her skin with maddening slowness. Each touch was a caress, a promise of more. When her feet were bare, he stood again, pulling her gently into his embrace. Her body, clad only in lace, pressed against his bare chest, the contrast of soft silk and warm, hard skin sending a jolt of pure pleasure through her. His lips found hers again, this time with a deep, consuming hunger that left her breathless. It was a kiss that promised no return, a complete surrender to the moment, to the undeniable pull between them. Her hands moved, tracing the strong lines of his back, feeling the play of his muscles beneath her fingertips, savoring the warmth of his skin. He lifted her effortlessly into his arms, a gasp escaping her lips as she instinctively wrapped her legs around his waist, holding on to him tightly. He carried her towards the bedroom, his steps sure and steady, his gaze never leaving hers. The bedroom was dimly lit, a haven of soft shadows and hushed whispers. The rain had completely stopped, replaced by the soft chirping of crickets outside, a gentle lullaby to their unfolding intimacy. He laid her gently on the bed, the soft mattress yielding beneath her, a cloud of comfort. He didn't immediately join her. Instead, he stood beside the bed, his eyes still locked with hers, a silent question passing between them. He slowly reached for the remaining pieces of his clothing, his trousers, his movements still imbued with that same deliberate grace. As he shed his last barrier, revealing his strong, lean legs, the sight of him completely unadorned made her heart pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. He was magnificent, a vision of masculine beauty, and he was hers. He finally joined her on the bed, not immediately pressing close, but lying beside her, propped on one elbow, his gaze still holding hers captive. His hand reached out, his fingers gently tracing the curve of her hip, then moving upwards, along her ribcage, to the delicate lace of her bra. "This, too," he murmured, his voice husky, his eyes dark with desire. She nodded, her breath catching. She watched him as he reached behind her, his fingers deftly unhooking the clasp of her bra. The lace fell away, revealing her breasts, full and exquisitely sensitive, their peaks already hardened with anticipation. His gaze lingered there, a silent homage, before he leaned down, his lips finding the sensitive skin between her breasts. Then moving upwards, to her collarbone, and then lower, to the soft swell of her breast. He didn't rush, but kissed and licked and nipped with agonizing slowness, driving her to the brink of madness. A soft moan escaped her, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure. Her fingers tangled in his hair, holding him closer, urging him on. He moved lower, his lips and tongue a path of fire across her skin, driving her deeper into the soft mattress. He found the last barrier, the delicate lace of her briefs, his fingers tracing the edge, then slipping beneath the fabric, his touch warm and knowing. He looked up, meeting her gaze one last time, his eyes dark and burning with an intensity that stole her breath. "Are you ready now?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The question a gentle demand, a final asking of consent. Her answer was a soft gasp, a breathless nod, her body arching into his touch, a silent plea for him to finally, completely, make her his. The night was young, and the possibilities boundless. She was ready. More than ready. He released the last whisper of silk, letting it fall away from her hips like a sigh. The air, cool against her bared skin, was immediately replaced by the warmth of his hands, tracing the line of her hip bone, then the curve of her waist. Fingers light as a feather, yet leaving a trail of fire. His gaze, still locked with hers, held a promise, a profound understanding that transcended words. He didn't speak, not with his lips, but with his eyes, with the slow, deliberate movement of his thumbs stroking the sensitive skin just below her ribs, sending shivers through her core. She felt herself sway, a soft moan escaping her lips, a sound she didn't know she was capable of. Her hands, almost involuntarily, found purchase on his shoulders, her fingers gripping the strong, warm muscle beneath his shirt. The scent of him, a clean, earthy musk mingled with something subtly spicy, filled her senses, intoxicating and anchoring her to this moment, to him. He leaned in, the faint brush of his stubble against her cheek, a delicious friction, his breath warm against her ear. "My love," he murmured. The endearment a surprise, a sweet shock that reverberated through her. "You are exquisite." Then, his lips were on hers again, but this kiss was different. It wasn't the teasing, exploratory kiss from earlier, nor the hungry, possessive one that had followed. This was a kiss of deep reverence, of slow, unfolding passion. His mouth moved over hers with a tender hunger, a gentle pressure that spoke of devotion. He tasted of wine, and something uniquely him, a flavor she was already craving. Her lips parted instinctively, inviting him deeper, and he accepted the invitation with a soft groan, his tongue a silken dance partner, exploring the hidden warmth within. Her fingers tightened on his shoulders, then tangled in the soft hair at his nape, pulling him closer still, until there was no space left between them. Her body pressed into his, the thin barrier of his clothes feeling suddenly unbearable. Every inch of her skin sang with an electric current, awakened by his touch, his scent, his taste. She felt a deep, liquid heat unfurl low in her belly, spreading outwards, a delicious ache that demanded release. When he finally broke the kiss, it was only by a breath, his forehead resting against hers, eyes still closed, chest heaving softly against her own. "I've waited for you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, his thumbs still stroking her skin. For this. She couldn't speak, could only meet his intense gaze, her own eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears, tears of pure, unadulterated sensation. She saw her own longing reflected in the depths of his dark eyes, a mirror of desire that bound them together. He straightened slowly, his hands moving from her waist, gliding upwards, over the curve of her breasts, still covered by the delicate lace of her camisole. He didn't rush, his movements deliberate, almost worshipful. His fingertips brushed the edge of the lace, tracing the fabric, and she felt her nipples harden in anticipation, pressing against the silk. His eyes dropped to them, a dark fire igniting within their depths, and a soft gasp escaped her. "Beautiful," he breathed, his voice a low hum against the quiet of the room. With a gentle tug, he slipped the thin straps of the camisole down her shoulders, the silk pooling at her waist. Her breasts, full and exquisitely sensitive, were finally bared to his gaze, to the cool air, and to the heat of his approval. He didn't touch them immediately, but simply looked, his expression a mixture of awe and profound desire. It made her feel utterly exposed, yet exquisitely cherished, her vulnerability transformed into strength. Her cheeks flushed, a warmth spreading through her, but she didn't shy away. Instead, she lifted her chin, meeting his gaze, offering herself completely. He reached out then, his hands cupping her breasts with a tenderness that made her tremble. His thumbs brushed over her engorged nipples, sending a jolt straight through her. A wave of pleasure that made her arch into his touch, a silent plea. He lowered his head, his eyes never leaving hers, and she watched, mesmerized, as he took one perfectly peaked nipple into his mouth. The sensation was exquisite, a hot, wet suction that drew a startled moan from her. He suckled gently, teasingly, his tongue a warm, soft caress, sending shivers through her entire body. She threaded her fingers through his hair again, holding him close, her head falling back as she surrendered to the delicious onslaught of sensation. Every nerve ending seemed to be centered there, at his mouth, at his touch. He moved from one breast to the other, lavishing attention on each, drawing out the pleasure until she was breathless, her knees weak, clinging to him for support. The faint scent of her own aroused skin mingled with his, creating an intoxicating perfume that made her dizzy with desire. "You taste like heaven," he murmured against her skin, his voice rough, thick with passion. He lifted his head, his eyes heavy-lidded, dark with hunger. "But I want to taste all of you." He knelt before her then, a gesture that stole what little breath she had left. He didn't break eye contact, his gaze holding hers as he reached for the final barrier, the delicate lace panties that clung to her curves. His fingers were slow, deliberate, tracing the elastic at her waist, then the lace along her inner thigh. The air crackled with anticipation, every touch a spark, every breath a flame. With a soft, almost reverent motion, he slipped them down, inch by exquisite inch, his knuckles brushing her bare skin, setting it alight. They pooled at her feet, a silken whisper on the floor, leaving her completely exposed, completely vulnerable, completely his. She stood before him, bathed in the soft, ambient glow of the room, her body trembling with a mixture of excitement and awe. She felt a sudden surge of shyness, but it was quickly overshadowed by the fierce pride and desire in his eyes. He slowly, deliberately, let his gaze travel the length of her, from her flushed face to her trembling thighs, and back up again, lingering on the delicate curve of her belly, the soft delta between her legs, the lushness of her breasts. "Perfection," he whispered, his voice barely audible, thick with emotion. He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment, then gently cupped the warm, soft mound between her legs. A shock wave went through her, her knees buckling, and she gasped, leaning into his touch, her fingers digging into his shoulders. His thumb brushed over her clitoris, a light, teasing motion that made her arch, a wave of pure, exquisite pleasure washing over her. He watched her intently, his eyes dark with a powerful mixture of tenderness and raw hunger. "You are so ready for me," he whispered, his voice a low rumble, sending vibrations through her very core. He continued his gentle, rhythmic stroking, his fingers working their magic, teasing her to the brink, then pulling back, only to return with renewed intensity. The world outside the room ceased to exist. There was only him, his touch, and the rising tide of sensation within her. She felt herself melting, a honeyed warmth spreading through her veins, her body crying out for more. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "Please." He smiled then, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that sent a fresh wave of heat through her. "Soon, my love. But first." He rose, his movements fluid and graceful, drawing her gently towards the bed. The soft lamplight cast long shadows, making the room feel like a private sanctuary, a haven where only their desires existed. He laid her down on the cool, crisp sheets, her body sighing in contentment as it met the yielding softness. He paused, looking down at her, his silhouette framed by the gentle glow, a figure of masculine power and tender longing. "Now it's my turn," she breathed, her voice a little stronger, a spark of playful challenge in her eyes. He chuckled, a rich, warm sound that vibrated through her. "Indeed." He stood before her, his shirt still clinging to his broad shoulders, his dark trousers defining his muscular legs. The sight of him, still partially clothed, was an exquisite torment. a promise of what was to come. Her gaze devoured him, lingering on the taut planes of his chest beneath the fabric, the strong column of his neck, the sharp line of his jaw. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as they traced the buttons of his shirt. He stood still, a statue of desire, allowing her to take the lead. One by one, she unfastened the buttons, her fingertips brushing against the warm skin beneath, sending shivers through her own body. The fabric parted, revealing the sculpted muscles of his chest, dusted with dark hair that narrowed to a tantalizing line down his abdomen. She leaned up, pressing a soft kiss to his sternum, tasting the salt and musk of his skin. He groaned, a deep, guttural sound that thrilled her. Her hands moved to the hem of his shirt, and with a gentle tug, she helped him pull it over his head. He discarded it onto a nearby chair, his muscles flexing with the movement. The sight of his bare torso, broad and powerful, took her breath away. She traced the hard line of his collarbone, the curve of his shoulder, the ripple of his biceps. Her fingers danced over his chest, feeling the strong beat of his heart beneath her palm, a rhythm that mirrored her own. He leaned down, his lips brushing hers in a feather-light kiss. "You have magic in your touch," he murmured, his eyes dark and heavy-lidded. She smiled, a confident, sensual smile she hadn't known she possessed. Her hands moved lower, to the buckle of his belt. The metallic click echoed softly in the quiet room. She unfastened it, then slowly, deliberately, unzipped his trousers. Her fingers brushed against the thick fabric, then, tantalizingly, against the warm skin beneath. He tensed, a sharp intake of breath, his eyes closing for a moment as he savored the sensation. With newfound courage, she pushed his trousers down, watching as they fell to his ankles, revealing the taut, muscular lines of his thighs. He stepped out of them, his dark brief still clinging to him, a tantalizing promise of what lay beneath. Her gaze was drawn irresistibly to the prominent bulge, a testament to his undeniable desire. She reached out, her fingers tracing the outline of his arousal through the fabric. He groaned again, a deep, hungry sound that made her heart pound. "Are you going to torment me, my love?" he whispered, his voice hoarse with longing. "Perhaps," she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Just a little." She slipped her hands beneath the waistband of his briefs, her fingers brushing against the warm, hard skin beneath. He shuddered, his hands gripping her shoulders, his breath coming in ragged gasps. With a slow, deliberate motion, she pulled them down, letting them fall to the floor with the rest of his clothes. He stood before her, magnificent and completely unadorned, his body a testament to strength and raw masculinity. His arousal was prominent, a pulsing testament to his desire, and she felt a thrill, a deep sense of power, knowing she had evoked such a response. He looked at her then, his eyes burning with an unbridled hunger, yet tempered with an exquisite tenderness. He climbed onto the bed, positioning himself above her, his weight supported by his strong arms, his body hovering just inches above hers. The heat emanating from him was palpable, a delicious warmth that enveloped her. Her hands reached up, pulling him closer, until their bare bodies finally met. The sensation was electric, skin against skin, the hard planes of his chest against the softness of her breasts, the tautness of his stomach against the curve of her belly, the intimate press of his hips against hers. A collective sigh escaped them both, a sound of profound contentment and burgeoning desire. He kissed her then, a deep, soul-stirring kiss that left her breathless, his tongue plundering the sweet depths of her mouth, mimicking the intimate dance their bodies were about to embark on. His hands roamed over her back, tracing the delicate curve of her spine, then dipping to cup her buttocks, lifting her slightly, pressing her more firmly against his pulsing erection. She gasped, the exquisite pressure making her arch into him, a silent plea for more. The sheer magnitude of his desire, pressed against her, was almost overwhelming, yet utterly thrilling. She could feel the hard ridge of him, hot and ready, seeking entry. "You are so beautiful," he whispered against her lips, his voice husky, filled with awe. "Every inch of you." He moved slowly, deliberately, shifting his weight, his knee gently parting her thighs. She opened for him, her body aching with an exquisite readiness, a molten core of desire throbbing between her legs. He leaned down, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of her inner thigh, sending shivers through her. His breath was hot against her skin as he moved lower, his tongue tracing a path towards her core. Her breath hitched in her throat, her fingers gripping the sheets, her back arching off the bed. He kissed the soft skin of her inner thigh, then nudged her legs wider, his head descending further. She knew what he intended, and a thrill, a deep, primal yearning, surged through her. He reached her then, his warm breath fanning her most sensitive skin, a delicious prelude to his touch. He teased her, his lips brushing lightly, his tongue a feather-light stroke against her swollen clitoris, sending a jolt of pure pleasure straight through her. She cried out, a soft, involuntary sound, her hips lifting instinctively. He didn't rush, but savored the moment, exploring her with a tender intensity that was almost unbearable. His tongue swirled, dipped and flicked, each movement a carefully orchestrated symphony of sensation. The world narrowed to this, to his mouth, to the delicious building pressure between her legs. She felt herself spiraling, closer and closer to the edge, a sweet torment that was both agonizing and utterly divine. Her fingers tangled in his hair, holding him closer, silently begging him to continue, to push her over the edge. She whimpered, her body trembling, her senses overwhelmed by the sheer pleasure he was so expertly orchestrating. The liquid heat between her legs intensified, a burning ache that demanded release. He continued his exquisite torture, his pace quickening, his focus unwavering. She could feel the tremors starting deep within her, the first ripples of an approaching wave. She gasped, her back arching, her entire body taut with anticipation. Just as she felt the precipice, felt herself tumbling into the glorious abyss of release. He lifted his head, his eyes, dark and knowing, meeting hers. Not yet, he whispered, a hint of a playful challenge in his voice, though his own breath was ragged, his body trembling with suppressed desire. He moved up, pressing his body against hers once more, his hard erection throbbing against her already sensitive core. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her eyes wide with a mixture of frustration and intense longing. "You're cruel," she managed, a weak protest, though a small sensual smile played on her lips. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound against her chest. "Only to make the reward sweeter, my love." He kissed her then, a deep, hungry kiss that tasted of her own arousal, of the raw passion that simmered between them. He shifted his weight, his body aligning perfectly with hers. His fingers found her hand, lacing their fingers together, a silent promise of connection. His gaze was intense, unwavering, a silent question passing between them. She answered with a slow, deliberate arch of her hips, guiding him, inviting him. With a soft groan, he began to press forward, slowly, deliberately. The tip of him nudged against her entrance, hot and insistent. She gasped, her body instinctively tensing, then relaxing as a wave of overwhelming desire washed over her. She gripped his hand tightly, her eyes locked with his. He paused, giving her a moment to adjust, to embrace the sensation. "Look at me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She did, her eyes wide, glistening, reflecting the deep passion in his. She saw the tenderness there, the respect, and the fierce, unyielding hunger. Then, with a final exquisite push, he entered her. A gasp tore from her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated sensation. He filled her completely, stretching her, melding them together in a way that felt both ancient and utterly new. Her body welcomed him. A perfect fit. A homecoming she hadn't known she was waiting for. He buried his face in her neck, his body trembling, as he took a moment, just a moment, to simply be inside her. His breath was ragged against her ear, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Oh," she breathed, her voice a fragile whisper, tears pricking at her eyes. The feeling was overwhelming, a fusion of pleasure, intimacy, and profound connection that stole her breath away. He lifted his head, his eyes still dark with passion, but now softened with a deep, abiding tenderness. "My love," he murmured, his voice husky, almost reverent. "You are everything." He began to move then, slowly at first, a gentle rock of his hips, testing the waters, allowing her body to adjust to his presence. She met his rhythm, her hips lifting to greet him, to deepen the connection. Each thrust was a wave of pleasure, building, pulling her further into the intoxicating current. The bed creaked softly with their movements, the only sound in the room apart from their ragged breaths and soft moans. The world outside had faded entirely, leaving only the two of them, entwined, lost in the dance of their shared desire. He leaned down, kissing her deeply, his tongue mimicking the rhythm of his hips, deepening the intimacy. Her hands roamed over his back, feeling the ripple of his muscles, the tautness of his skin under her touch. She clung to him, wanting to be closer still, to absorb every inch of him, every sensation. His pace quickened, becoming more insistent, more demanding. She met him with equal fervor, her body arching, her legs wrapping around his waist, pulling him deeper still. The friction, the pressure, the exquisite fullness, all combined into a crescendo of sensation that threatened to consume her. He whispered encouragement, endearments against her skin, words that fueled her fire, that made her feel cherished and utterly desired. Her vision blurred, her mind emptied of everything but the overwhelming pleasure, the primal rhythm that now controlled them both. The waves crashed over her, one after another, each more intense than the last. She felt her body tightening, coiling, preparing for the inevitable release. He felt it too, his own movements becoming more urgent. His body taut with the strain of holding back, wanting to bring her with him. He pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes, his own blazing with fierce passion. "Let go, my love," he urged, his voice a raw command. "Come with me." And with his words, with a final, powerful thrust, she shattered. A moan tore from her throat, a long, drawn-out cry of pure ecstasy, as the orgasm rippled through her, shaking her to her very core. Her body convulsed around him, clinging to him as if he were her only anchor in the storm of sensation. He groaned, a primal sound of release, and followed her over the edge, pouring himself into her, his body shuddering with his own intense climax. He collapsed onto her, his weight a comforting pressure, his heart pounding against her breast. They lay tangled together, breathless, their bodies slick with sweat, the echoes of their shared release still vibrating through the room. The air was thick with their scent, with the lingering energy of their passion. He pressed a soft kiss to her temple, then rested his head in the hollow of her shoulder, his breathing slowly evening out. She stroked his hair, feeling the dampness of it against her fingers, a profound sense of peace settling over her. She felt utterly sated, cherished, and utterly, completely connected to him. It was more than just physical pleasure. It was a soul-deep communion, a merging of two beings that left her feeling whole. After a long, comfortable silence, he stirred, lifting his head to look at her. His eyes, still dark and heavy-lidded, held a tenderness that made her heart ache. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle, reverent. "Are you all right?" he whispered, his voice still a little rough but filled with concern. She smiled, a soft, content smile. "More than all right," she murmured, her voice husky with lingering pleasure. "I'm perfect." He leaned down, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her lips. "Good," he breathed, a genuine warmth radiating from him. He shifted, his body still partially within hers, a comforting weight, a constant reminder of their recent intimacy. The night was still young, the moon casting its silver glow through the window, illuminating their intertwined forms. The journey they had embarked upon had been breathtaking, a testament to desire and connection. But as she lay there, cradled in his arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her, she knew this was just the beginning. The world had opened up, revealing new depths of sensation and emotion. And she was ready, more than ready, to explore every single one of them with him. The possibilities, as he had said, were boundless. The possibilities, as he had said, were boundless. She drifted into a soft, dreamless sleep, enveloped in his warmth. When she stirred again, it was to the gentle caress of dawn, painting the room in hues of rose and gold. His arm was still around her, a comforting weight, and his breath feathered softly against her hair. She shifted slightly, just enough to feel the solid contours of his chest against her back, the rhythmic thrum of his heartbeat, a lullaby she never wanted to end. A faint masculine scent, a blend of their shared night and his own unique essence, clung to the sheets, intoxicating and deeply familiar. She opened her eyes, not quite ready to break the spell, and found herself tracing the pattern of the silken duvet with a lazy finger. The world outside felt distant, hushed, as if waiting for them to re-emerge. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a sound of pure contentment. He stirred then, a low rumble in his chest that vibrated through her. His arm tightened around her, pulling her closer still. "Morning, sleepyhead," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep, a delicious rasp that sent shivers down her spine. He pressed a warm kiss to the nape of her neck, lingering, and she arched into the touch, a silent invitation. "Morning," she whispered back, her voice a little breathy. She turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his. They were still heavy-lidded, but a knowing warmth glowed within them, a reflection of the profound connection they had forged. He reached up, his thumb brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek, his touch exquisitely tender. "Sleep well?" he asked, his gaze searching hers as if looking for confirmation of the magic they had shared. She nodded, a small blissful smile gracing her lips. "Better than I ever have." She saw the answering smile in his eyes, a deep, genuine joy. There was no need for words to describe the intensity of the night, the way they had explored each other's bodies and souls, the crescendo of passion that had left them both breathless and utterly fulfilled. It was all there, unspoken, in the lingering tenderness of his touch, the quiet reverence in his gaze. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to meet him, and their lips met in a soft, unhurried kiss. It wasn't the fiery passion of the night before, but something deeper, more resonant, a kiss of affirmation, of belonging. It tasted of morning, of promises, of a shared future stretching out before them. His hand moved to her waist, drawing her closer until there was no space left between them. The warmth of his skin, the familiar feel of his body against hers, was a comfort she realized she had unknowingly craved her entire life. "I could stay like this forever," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper against his lips. He chuckled softly, a rich, warm sound that resonated in her chest. "The day will demand our attention eventually," he said, his eyes twinkling, "but not yet." He shifted, propping himself up slightly on one elbow, his gaze never leaving her face. "I had no idea," he began, his voice dropping to a more serious tone, "that I could feel like this. That Chokiwe could feel like this." She reached up, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw, feeling the slight stubble that had grown overnight. "Me neither," she admitted. "It was everything." She searched for the right words, for something that could encapsulate the earth-shattering beauty of their night, but found none adequate. It felt like coming home. His eyes softened even further, a profound understanding passing between them. He leaned down again, this time to kiss her forehead, then her eyelids, her nose, before finally settling on her lips for another long, lingering kiss. "Then welcome home, my love," he murmured, his breath warm against her. They lay there for a long time, talking in soft tones, sharing quiet thoughts, and simply basking in the glow of their shared intimacy. Eventually, the growing brightness of the morning sun began to call to them. He rose first, stretching languidly, his powerful frame silhouetted against the window. She watched him, a thrill running through her at the sheer beauty of his form, the grace in his movements. He turned, a playful smile on his face, and offered her a hand. "How about some coffee?" he suggested, his eyes full of warmth. And perhaps a proper breakfast? She took his hand, letting him pull her gently to her feet. The cool air of the room was a pleasant contrast to the warmth of their bed, but the warmth of his hand, the promise in his eyes, was all she needed. As they walked towards the kitchen, his arm draped casually around her waist, she felt a lightness in her step, a profound sense of peace and joy that hummed beneath her skin. The world outside might be bustling, demanding their return, but for now, in the quiet intimacy of their shared morning, they were still in their own private universe. The aroma of brewing coffee soon filled the air, mingling with the scent of fresh fruit and toast. They moved around the kitchen in a comfortable rhythm, a silent dance of two people who had found their perfect partner. He buttered toast while she sliced strawberries, their hands brushing occasionally, sending quiet sparks of connection through them. As they sat at the small kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window, painting their faces in a warm glow, she looked at him across the table. His eyes held hers, a profound sense of contentment settling between them. The journey they had embarked upon had indeed been breathtaking, a testament to desire and connection. But as she sat there, sharing coffee and a quiet smile with him, feeling the steady beat of her own heart echoing his, she knew this was more than just the beginning. It was the beautiful unfolding reality. The world had opened up, revealing new depths of sensation and emotion, and she had discovered a boundless love she never knew existed. And she was ready, more than ready, to explore every single one of those boundless possibilities with him, forever and always.